Hello. Who is this fat person? I told him to take one of my nice pictures, but no. Okay, so now I type my password in. Use Firefox. And yay, it works. Okay, I have... Normally, these opening things are here to rile you up, to make you excited, to get you, show you new cool stuff that's going to be amazing in the next few months for you. I didn't want to do that. First of all, I was asked by the translators to speak slower, so I'm already sorry that I messed that one up. I also need your help. If these translators say something bad about me, because I don't speak Portuguese, just put your hand up. Like, you know, no mama jokes and these kind of things, so I hope that they're professional, but I saw them earlier and talked to them. They seem to be professional enough. I also, in your handouts, and I was asked to ask that there's a survey about what you think of my talk, and if you fill that out and give it to the Microsoft booth, we do a raffle where we give you stuff. I don't know what it is, but say nice things about me, because I need that. I'm a very lonely person. I also thought I'd make an effort and put the football jersey on to show my support for that. I'm also very sorry about the World Cup. I was sitting in England in a pub and I was like, oh God, stop it. This is, no, not another one. And I was just standing there like, this is not right. But sadly enough, it happened that way. So today I want to talk to you about, I want to set the mood a bit different, because you look up to us, you look up to the innovation of Mozilla, of Microsoft, of Apple, of Google, of all these companies, Facebook out there, and you always think like, oh, this is so cool, I would love to use that. And then your boss tells you to fix like 5-pixel layouts and stuff and things like that, like, we're going to make money with our users. No, that's so boring, I want to do cool stuff. So I want to make sure that we're thinking about new technologies as an opportunity for the future. And I want to discuss today how, if we can make ES6 the baseline of what we call the modern web, which is a term that I hate from the beginning, because the modern web used to be table layouts and frames, and then it became Flash, and then it became, no, it never was applets, but applets were there as well. But I just want to make sure that we set a baseline here and not just a future dream. Because I think we're doing far too much thinking about what the future would be rather than pushing forward to reach that future. And for that, I was thinking about bands. And I was thinking about that in most bands, the bass player plays a very important part. And nobody gives the bass player enough credit. Everybody knows singers, everybody knows guitarists, but the bass player, unless it's Flea of Red Hot Chili Peppers, everybody's like, yeah, it's the guy in the corner. You know that... Don't know who that person is. I used to sing in a punk band. We had a bass player that was so shy, he would always face the wall. And strangely enough, our band became famous because of it, locally. You know, like, because, did you know that bass player that never looks at the audience? Like, ooh, that's so mysterious. And he's like, he was just shy. And it was bizarre that I'm doing my job as a singer and he gets the credit for staring at a wall. It's just odd. The bass brings the drive. It really moves the song forward, and it also keeps up the rhythm. It makes the song as much more tighter and much more interesting together than if we didn't have the bass. I mean, just get like Ace of Spades from Motorhead, just the beginning of that. In the first 2 seconds, you know this is going to be an amazing song, because the bass starts immediately. And it's just the thing, without it, there wouldn't be anything. It would be hard to get to know. I mean, of course, there's bands that only got drums and guitars, but with bass, there's always a bit of a boom, yay, this is going to be good. Many bands I admire are bass-driven. You know, like Motorhead, Faith No More, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Prong, all these things out there. Their bass player is the one that actually wrote most of the songs and gets them out there. And yet when it comes to rock stars, when people talk about rock stars, they always talk about the singer, or they always talk about the frontman, the lead guitarist, these kind of people. The bass guy is always there to just do the work. Much like we all are here to do work. The idea of being a web developer is to allow people to use the web, to consume the web, but also to write things for the web and participate in it. And we lost that a bit. We got more excited about impressing each other with cool stuff that we could do if our users weren't those losers that didn't upgrade their browsers. And that just drives me crazy, because we forgot that this is a medium. This is not a software platform. This is where people publish. This is where people get a voice. This is where people want to speak up, and the governments that control the other media, for now, because that's another problem that we have, that the internet might get controlled more and more by governments and companies while we're discussing if semicolons should be at the end of the line or not. So there's more important things to deal with right now. The frontmen of those bands also are the ones that start like solo careers a lot of times, and terrible solo albums, and also they burn out really, really quickly. Whereas the bass players are more dedicated of keeping the band together. And every bass player that I know, and I used to be a radio journalist and interviewed a lot of bands, every bass player has the best connections to other bands. They're not that, the ego is not there. They're not like, I'm the coolest singer on this planet. They're like, I'm a bass player in that band, and we should tour with that band. We should get that label. We should work with other people. Now, the other day I was in Nebraska, Omaha, of all places. I didn't even know what Nebraska was before I flew there. And it was a conference in a zoo. And I thought, that's awesome. You know, like, I'm going to meet other code monkeys. This is really, really good. And after the conference, I went to a concert, because people told me there's a local band playing that is really, really cool, and that's that band that you see here. And the room was full, like 200 people, all of them in their 40s, and everybody reminiscing about high school when they saw that band the first time. And the bass player there was called Bruce Coddington. And this is what he rocked out like on stage. And there was something different about this bass player. And the difference was that he actually spoke at the JavaScript conference the day before, but he was also part of a famous band. So he spoke about React.js and the isomorphic buzz and so on and so forth. And what I liked most about it, that he was on stage at the concert, which was like a few hours after the conference, wearing his GitHub t-shirt and having a JavaScript sticker on his bass. So the whole audience was, you know, like, and I was like, that's rock and roll, you know? That's proper rock star stuff, not like the rock star stuff that TechCrunch tells us that rock stars are. I always love them when people are like, we need a rock star developer. You should go into the office and trash one of the cubicles. You know, throw a TV out of the window or something like that. And they're like, what, you wanted a rock star? You know, you didn't want to have a normal person. And I loved his bio. Bruce is an ex-rockstar wannabe that stumbled across web development over a decade ago. He loves writing JavaScript, trying new frameworks, and using other people's good ideas to make his life easier. He's currently the chief operating officer for a small finance company, so all of his coding is officially for fun. And this rocks. These are the people I want to see. These are the people. Yay, that joke number one. These are the people that I want to see more on stage. These are the people that drive things forward. These are the people, the bass players of the web, that set new technology the baseline. Because new technology is not always usable, and it will never get usable unless we make it a baseline. And it shouldn't be the people that play the drum the loudest. You know, the ones that like, we need every user to upgrade. We need this to change. Every browser should do what we do. It should not be the people that scream the most, because I get very annoyed how much anger is in our market right now and in our community. I'm getting tired of going on Twitter. I used to go on Twitter to send people stuff and to find good things. And nowadays it's just this bickering and angry, aggressive thing. Everything you do is misunderstood. Everything you do is quoted wrongly. It just drives me crazy that we are these angry people, while at the same time we have an amazing job. We get paid. We have a job. Look around you, how many people don't have one and don't get one. We get paid for the stuff that we love. We go home and keep doing the things that we get paid for because that's what we do. And who else is in that position? I mean, surgeons shouldn't do it. But like, in our case, it's a different story. We love what we do and we get paid for it. And I think this is where Bruce has it down. You know, when it comes to like, he loves writing JavaScript. And we should love writing JavaScript. We should play with it. We should play with new features and discard them and give feedback. He tries new frameworks and he tries them. He doesn't subscribe to them as a religion and says like, you all should use that framework this week because the other ones are terrible. I feel like going to internet news about JavaScript, and by the time I get back home from flights, okay, I want to give that library a chance, and then there's already the first blog post, don't use that library ever because it kills kittens and you get like fungus from it or whatever. You know, as we innovate things and we discard them far too fast instead of just trying them in internal A/B testing, trying them out to build something with them and not just say like, this is the future, everybody should use that one. Using other people's good ideas to make his life easier. Not come up with the next idea to win Hacker News for the day. Just like, that's a good idea. How about I change my code according to this pattern and see how much it's better for me, how much memory is used, how faster my JavaScript is, and so on and so forth. And for him, coding is officially for fun. And that's okay. We can have fun coding. Most of the time, our day-to-day deliveries from our bosses, if we give them what they want, we have another 2 hours without them knowing that we don't do things for work. As long as the code editor is open and we look like, that's really problematic, people will be happy, yeah, he's coding. That's good. Like, we don't want you to do things like, like talking to customers or things, code. So have fun doing that. Because I'm tired of the fights and I'm tired of aggressive fans. I'm tired of people telling me every single time when I work for Mozilla, I go to people and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I use Chrome. I'm like, why should I be sorry for you? Or why should you be sorry for me? It's your choice. You took a browser that's evergreen. Thank you. You know, the same with like Microsoft. People are like, oh, I use a Mac. And I'm like, yeah, so do I. You know, I choose whatever I want because I'm a developer and I'm not our audience. That there's millions and millions of people that have Windows machines out there and that use old browsers. This is something that we have to deal with. We're not our audience. We don't fight for ourselves or against each other. What we fight is outdated systems and bad practices in technology. We don't fight them by innovating more. We fight them by removing old stuff and writing better and more maintainable code. There are a few things out there about the web that can't be changed. And that's something I've been talking about for 15 years, and it's something I came to terms with and peace with very early in my career. And it's also why the web grew so much faster than all the other platforms out there. The first one is that the web is designed to work independent of hardware, software, ability, or location. This is how it was defined by Tim Berners-Lee. Independent system, not a peer-to-peer system, but basically a distributed system that everybody is allowed to play in. And if somebody uses an old Windows 95 machine in an internet cafe in deep down Rwanda in Africa, you cannot tell them to upgrade to a better browser. You have to realize that this is your audience as much as your audience is somebody on a proxy server in China, as much as somebody is your audience in this cafe in San Francisco putting another sticker on their laptop, because that's what we do. We also have to get to terms with that native environments are faster to innovate as they control the user. If you write the software, the hardware, and the distribution, you can innovate much, much better than everybody else because you have no dependencies on other people. It's totally fine for a native application to say, oh, your phone is not fast enough. Sorry, you cannot have this app. If a website tells you that, people say, oh, that's the wrong website. And this is a different thing. These are two different worlds. Native is meant to be consumed and discarded. The web is meant to bring data, information, content to people and allow people to start writing content and distribute it as well. It's a read-write web, not a please download this game and if you suck at it, pay some money so you get to the next level. And it's like self-driving cars and watches that you can talk to. That has never been around, right? There will always be browser fragmentation, and PPK is the overlord of that one. I love that cartoon that somebody painted of him at a conference. There's always a browser that breaks things. And there's always a browser that you hate, but you cannot do anything about it because it's not you to tell your end users what browser to use. Your job is to put an if statement around things to make sure that that browser doesn't get things that break it, but it gets something that works. You have a JavaScript problem on Chrome, on Google, you still get a search mask that works. If JavaScript has been loaded completely, you got an autocomplete, all the cool things going on, but it still works. There will always be a browser that annoys you, and you cannot do anything about it. So think about what you do, and don't think that people upgrade to the browser that you love because your website is amazing. It better be a really amazing website for that. And there's not many out there. Our job is to deliver content and functionality to end users. We are there for them, not they for us. They're the people who pay the money that we get money from. They're the people who click the ads that we have an ad blocker for. They're the people that we deliver things to. And I learned that at radio. I knew I was spending 3 hours making a 15-second sound piece for the news. I knew nobody's going to sit in front of the radio like, oh, that's amazing. But a few people mentioned it, a few people talked to me, and that was good enough. Because the craft that I put into those 50 seconds got me excited. And I talked to other people who also did audio production, and they're like, oh, I saw what you did there. Same when we look at view source of other people's sites, and we're like, that was amazing. I want to do that as well. That is even a design principle of HTML5 itself, the priorities of constituencies, because it's a standard, so it has to use long words that nobody understands. In case of conflict, consider users over authors, over implementers, and specifiers over theoretical purity. What comes out at the end is important. It's not that we need more tools to write more code. It's that we need more code out in the wild that performs well, that is usable, and that is maintainable. We get too excited about our own tools, making like, I only have to write 3 lines of whatever language to make these 6,000 lines of that. And the 6,000 lines come down on a wire where I have to pay a lot of money for it. Here, my English connection on my phone is £6 a megabyte. That's about 70 real. Your website better be good for me paying that much money for it. It's a tall order. It's hard to do the whole embracing thing of the web and understanding that we're there for our end user and understanding that we don't control the environments. But it's a way to deal with it. And I dealt with it for 15 years and I'm happy with it. I love seeing people becoming a presenter. I love seeing people having a website for their little company, although they don't know coding. If people start telling me that everybody needs to learn to code to take part in the internet, then we messed up. Then we really, really lost the idea of what it's supposed to do. So what's the big thing that made the massive change that we get so excited about that we have to innovate everything right now? It's mobile. The main thing that demanded change is the rise of mobile. And we always think like, oh, everybody uses mobile to be much more effective, having to-do list apps, looking up the weather, changing their lives. But most of the time, it's just people standing around with a selfie stick taking pictures of themselves. Then putting a few stickers and emoticons on it and sending them onto Facebook and say, like, look how creative I was. We can match that with JavaScript, but do we really want to? Shouldn't we be better than that? Shouldn't we be better than a pure consumption environment where people take cookie cutter solutions and make something out of it? We should allow people to be more creative than that. On mobile, the deck is stacked against the web. The web, the browser, is always the last app to use because every mobile provider makes money with apps. Or they make money with their services that people use search, that people use the weather, that people use the stock tickers. At mobile, the browser is like, yeah, we got to put a browser on there, but it's kind of feel odd because we want to control the user because that's how we make money. The main thing is that browsers are hardwired to the operating system, and that was a terrible idea with Windows 95 and IE6. And we complained about that for 15 years, all the time. We don't complain about it on other operating systems on the mobile device because it's just the way it is, right? You know, why would an operating system allow more than one browser engine on their operating system? That's just crazy talk. Maybe it's not. Hardware creators, service providers, and even third-party vendors come up with their own browsers. I just got a Huawei phone. I have no idea what that browser is. It's probably Chrome-based, probably WebKit-based. It came with 6,000 apps that I don't want and I don't need, that I can't delete. This is the thing that people do. Open source has been used by companies to make closed environments, and we should be up in arms against that as well. The more you control the experience on the mobile, the better you are. The more your users have to use all your stuff, the more money you make with them. The more information you get from them, the more you can sell their data to other people. And that's sometimes an okay thing. Most of the time it's not. To compete on mobile, we need the web technology stack to approve. We need these cool things to access NFC, to access USB, to accelerometer we have, location we have already. All these things are available to us, but the main thing that makes a native app exciting is to talk to everything that the hardware provides. And in JavaScript, we sadly enough are still in a very bad space there. Unless you are in the newest, coolest Android, on the newest, coolest Chrome, using the Play Store to upgrade your browser all the time, which not everybody wants to do, and some providers actually block you from doing. The needs for JavaScript have changed over the years. It's totally true. I mean, JavaScript has been done in 10 days. It has a lot of weird quirks. It has a lot of memory problems. It has a lot of environmental problems that on mobile devices it doesn't run as fast as it should. Doing a great job making that work, but there's still things where in native we cannot match. And it's really hard to actually change the tires of a moving car. And the web is constantly moving. So when we innovate JavaScript and say like, oh, this JavaScript feature should be everywhere, and people have different browsers and don't change their browsers, we have an issue. That's why a lot of discussion about web innovation assumes defined environments. You know, a lot of the innovation happens in experimental browsers. They're experimental in one browser only, and then as soon as the message comes out, like, Firefox uses this, everybody goes to the other browser makers. Why didn't you do that as well? Well, we didn't know it's coming, because the competition between browsers has become this big thing that every developer tries to be part of. Like, oh, browsers should be in competition because that's innovative. Can be, but it also can be super destructive because people innovate more than they actually implement, or put more things in that look shiny and look amazing, but then discard them 2 months later after you tried to use them. Some features rely on pre-processing, post-processing, or compilation. That's a totally fine thing to use as well. But the question is like, how maintainable does that become? It was easy to actually use a text editor, write some JavaScript, open it up in the browser and see this thing working. Setting up something on the command line, going to the terminal, having to use a Macintosh just to write some JavaScript, kind of feels weird. And it kind of feels like, why don't I just go to use native and Android and iOS instead then, because these tool chains are much more mature. Some features rely on conversion to binary formats, and I'm quite sure this is what Brendan will talk about at the end of this conference. WebAssembly looks incredibly good. ASM.js and Mscripton, we've done some really amazing stuff with that. And you look at the Mozilla booth and you look at the 3D gaming stuff that they're doing there. This is some cool future coming there. But it raises the bar much, much higher for developers to start with, because you're not going to write a 3D game unless you really, really want to get into it. And probably OpenGL is what you should start with then, and then convert it somehow. A lot of great innovation happens on the server side in Node environments. And Laurie is going to talk about NPM. And Node is really, really nice because you control the environment and you can do some really amazing stuff there. And there's nothing wrong with all of that. But we need to find a way to move the whole web forward at the same time. It's far too easy to get excited about doing our own packages and our own Node environments, little servers and things. But in the end, the website out there, the average website is 2 megabyte big with 100 HTTP requests. And I wonder who makes these websites. Because it's not us. It's not the clever people that go to conferences and learn about all this stuff. Somewhere out there is messing up all the cool things that we're doing here. And I think it's time to reach out and make that not happen, rather than just innovating and getting frustrated if we're not clever enough as the other person next to us. Today, you will hear a lot about new ideas, new innovations, and new approaches to solve the problems. And I want you to think about them. I want you to not get excited and frustrated that you cannot use them. I want you to pick one part of each and start playing with it and seeing how you can put that into production. Because I'm getting sick and tired of every cool, innovative JavaScript library coming out and then the last paragraph on the page saying, don't use in production. So what is this for? Slide deck? Winning Hacker News? Like, when did we stop building things for production? You know, somehow you should produce things to make things. That'd be cool. One of the most promising and important things to me right now is ES6. Because of many features. It innovates JavaScript on a language basis. It allows people who come from other languages to write JavaScript without understanding what JavaScript is about. It gives us more type safety. It gives us more memory options. It gives us lots and lots of cool stuff. The features inside ES6, there's so much goodness in it, it must be fattening. You know, it cannot be a normal thing. It's just so much cool stuff coming into ES6 and being standardized now. And a lot of those have different audiences. It's very overwhelming to look at whole of ES6 and I'm never going to take that in. I might as well learn Java or Swift or whatever other language coming out. Julia is pretty cool. Or, Lua, whatever. But they have different audiences. There's syntactic sugar for all of us to make it easier for us to write more code in a very cleaner environment. There's scalable applications with let constant block scope bindings, classes, of course, which every Java developer wanted always in JavaScript. And then we got library builders who have all the features for library builders. So a lot of the features of ES6 are for different audiences. So don't get frustrated if you don't understand them because they're just not made for you. That's fine. I have no idea how to use symbols, but I'm not going to use them anytime soon because I'm not going to write a library. So that's okay. Don't get frustrated by innovation. Embrace it. Find the thing that gets you excited and use it. Support is encouraging, but also patchy. So red is bad, which is kind of bad, seeing that picture. But if you look at the compat table of ES6 maintained by Kangex, it's getting more and more green and yellow. And these things need testing, these things need love, these things need understanding by you, and not just like, oh, your browser doesn't have everything, it sucks. Really? How many of these things are you going to use? What do you need most? The more feedback you give browser makers, the better we can make browsers. The problem with ES6 is that for non-supporting browsers, a lot of these things are just syntax errors. Arrow functions, let. It's just like, I don't know what let is. That's probably a syntax error. I stop executing your JavaScript, which is like the thing about JavaScript anyways. HTML and CSS are forgiving. When you write something it doesn't understand, okay, go to the next line, see if that makes sense. JavaScript, like, I hate you. Gone. I'm not going to play with you anymore. Done. That's why it's quite funny when people get very excited, like, oh, I do everything with JavaScript because an empty page is a great, great experience for your end users. We said XHTML is a really bad idea because one encoding error means the page doesn't get displayed, but we rely on JavaScript where much more things can go wrong. That's fine. No. The solution to put ES6 into older browsers and browsers environments that don't support it is transpiling. Babel, Tracer, all the things that are coming up. Probably a new one coming out while I'm speaking here. And that's cool, because I can use all the stuff and it gets converted to code that runs in my end user's environment. I don't have to think about that. The problems with transpiling, of course, is that it adds an extra step in between coding and executing, which means setting up your environment, expecting a certain server setup, expecting a certain client setup if you do transpiling on the client. And that is the problem, because the web grew because it was easy. It wasn't I needed a certain IDE, an environment, or anything like that. I just was allowed to code. We don't run or debug the code we write. It's the other problem, because we don't have to put like source maps into our scripts so that development tools can tell us which line created the code that is broken. So there's a lot of tracing back and forth between those two things. We're at the mercy of the transpiler to create efficient code. If the transpiler has a problem or the transpiler gets outdated and you don't upgrade your transpiler code, you might get inefficient code that supports IE5 but is really terrible in Edge or in Firefox 40. So we are at the mercy of the machine that we're using in between. We create probably much more code than we need. And we need less code on the web, not more. We really, really don't need more code on the web. We need faster, leaner, better environments because IoT is coming, smartwatches are coming, low-end environments are the future. So the less code we can write, the less code we can generate, the better. It has to be more efficient code. Browsers that support with ES6, like Firefox, like Chrome, like Edge, and iOS Safari, don't get ES6. They don't get the code because we transpile it to ES5. So why do all the browsers have ES6 in them? It's mostly for internal use and mostly for, I don't know, because if we don't give them ES6, it really feels like a wasted effort. We could feature test ES6. Kyle Simpson has this featuretest.io that allows you to just say, okay, this browser supports these ES6 features, and then I can use that feature in my code. I love progressive enhancement. I love feature testing. Maybe a good idea to think about it. The problem with feature testings are, of course, that it's an extra step that might be costly. Like really, really heavy feature testing might delay your execution, might give you a wrong impression of what the thing should do. We can only do it client-side. That's the other problem with feature testing. Most transpiling is happening on the server, so we just convert to the lowest common denominator, which is ES5 and sometimes even ES3. We can get false positives. Experimental features might have the main object in there, but not the methods that we try to access. So just testing for the main object is not good enough. And we have to keep our feature tests up to date and extend them as needed, because experimental features change all the time. So our feature testing library also has to get upgraded and has to get maintained. We can also use an abstraction, a framework or library that has the same features. This was my shower head in England for 5 years because I'm lazy. But you put something on top of JavaScript and write it in TypeScript or write it in React or what other language out there is compiling back to JavaScript, compiling back to ES6. And at the moment, it makes us dependent of that abstraction. Out of a sudden, it says like, oh, we need to hire a developer, you need to know React. You need to use multools, you need to know jQuery, you need to know all these things. Out of a sudden, it's not about the features of the browser or the web anymore. Out of a sudden, it's about the abstraction library. We can't control possible clashes in the abstraction layer. Like if a language like Angular 1 and Angular 2 is completely different, you have no control over that. And you have to rewrite your code for the next abstraction again, which good reasons for it probably. It uses TypeScript now, but it's annoying as a developer because you use these abstractions not to have to rewrite code. Maintainers need to know the abstraction instead of the standard of ES6. And this is slowing down the adoption and the definition of ES6 because we just use the abstraction instead. So here's a controversial statement following. And to make that easier, I give you a puppy in a blanket to make it not that controversial. We all know that the DOM is slow, terrible, and to blame for all of our problems. That's why we have virtual DOM in some new libraries, and Brandon Ike and John Resig gave great talks about why the DOM is broken and how many terrible things are in there. Now my question is, did we allow it to stay that way and still be a problem as we abstracted the issues away? Get elements by class name, get query selector, document query selector, all of these things that we learned from jQuery, from YUI, from MooTools, from Prototype, and all these libraries out there. But it took us ages to put these in the browser. It took us ages to understand that this is what developers need, because developers did not use the DOM anymore. They didn't use the native JavaScript. They just used the abstraction library. Everybody started like, oh, you use jQuery and then everything is fine. And then mobile came around. Out of a sudden, jQuery was far too fat and far too slow. And we just had to innovate the browser again. But we lost a few years by trusting abstractions rather than pushing the web itself forward, pushing the language forward, pushing the browsers forward. So ES6 right now is a conundrum. We can't use it safely in the wild because old browsers. And old browsers, we cannot tell everybody to upgrade unless we send them a free laptop and say, like, use this one instead. We can't use TypeScript. We can use TypeScript or transpile it. We can feature test for it, but that can get complex quickly because it's still in flux what these things mean. And a lot of times writing ES6 means you write in different patterns than writing ES5. So you really don't want to feature test everything and write mixed code in different styles. Browsers that support it will not get any ES6 that way, but you can use it internally. So the ES6 features in the browser are not used at the moment because transpiling transpiles to ES5 because it happens most of the time on the server. The performance of ES6 is bad right now, but that's normal. The language is much more complex than ES5, and that comes with slowness. But we need you to test these features to make them faster. Only by using them in the wild and getting real data and real information from people, we can actually make this thing better. But there's also good news. Internet Explorer is dead and Microsoft Edge is here. And I don't want to dwell on that, but this is why I went to Microsoft. I want IE to die. Happily. Not die, but go on a field and have fun with other old browsers and play Boccia or something. Just be away and not be the thing that holds us back any longer. And if you come around later and you talk to the team here and you try things out, it's a beautiful browser. And it's a browser that actually does the things that we wanted to do, and then we realized we just putting a standard in and making it standards compliant is not good enough for a browser. There's a great talk by my colleagues Brian Tersler and Gaurav Seth about the Chakra engine. If you want to get hardcore JavaScript compilation, just-in-time compilation information and stuff, this is where that's in there. And there's a lot of things you learn when you write a new JavaScript engine. One thing we learned is that inlining of JavaScript is almost impossible. What does that mean? You have one function in JavaScript that calls another function. The compiler has to turn that into bytecode, into understandable code for the computer. So you would build a binary for the first function and a binary for the second function, doubling the memory consumption, doubling the cycles, all the things that you need to do. So the just-in-time compiler most of the time takes a JavaScript, takes the other function, puts it inside the other one and make one binary blob out of the whole function then, rather than like having two different distinct binaries. That doesn't work if it's in different includes or it's across different domains because of the security problem. And people just don't minify that, just don't concatenate that JavaScript. So a lot of innovation in the JavaScript engine space didn't work because we just didn't that one step that we have grunt, gulp, burp, fart, or whatever you use to do that for us. People still don't do concatenation of their scripts, and that's just a very sad state of affairs. We need to optimize a lot of JS in the engine. For example, every for loop we encounter still iterates the length on every part of the loop. Seriously? This was like bad practice in every JavaScript tutorial that I've ever seen. But people just copy and paste things from Stack Overflow, whatever, and put it in there. Outdated libraries are a massive problem. Like, for example, we had the issue that MooTools had an array.contains method, which means the array.contains method of ES6 could not be implemented because too many websites would break, because it would override what MooTools does, and it does it in a different manner. So we had to rename it in the standard, in the ES6 standard. Zepto had a thing like, they didn't like the new array constructors, and again, it's in use, and we tried to email those companies that uses it, and these websites are not maintained anymore, just somebody threw it out there. But people rely on using it, so we cannot, as a browser maker, break the web that way. Minification, on the other hand, is cool. People use minification a lot, so all JavaScript engines are now optimized to run minified code faster. Thanks. Do that. Uglified.js for the win. Things I learned working for browser makers is another big one. It's a constant race not to break the web. Every mistake we developers do needs to get catered for. Because we cannot say that developer made a mistake. If something breaks, people say it's the browser. We always blame the tool, like, oh, if only I had the perfect hammer, I could paint this building or something. But whatever we do wrong stays there for years and years and makes browsers fatter and slower because we cannot break the web, but you broke it, or I broke it as well, because I wrote code that was terrible. The pressure is immense. We're pushing, instead of pushing for an interoperable web, everybody's like, oh, Chrome is cooler now, Edge is cooler now, Firefox is cooler now. These are tools. These are hammers. These are spanners. Nobody cares. End users use the browser that comes with the operating system or a browser that they made a conscious choice to use because of the service or the interface they have. They don't care about the JavaScript library. They don't care about the CSS support. Only we do. So the whole trench fighting which browser is the best is boring me for years and years now. When implementing standards, we find a lot of problems and feed them back. So 100% score on things like HTML5test.com or like ES6 tests means nothing. Because a lot of times 100% implementation means that broken code has to be implemented, because we find that when you really put it into a JavaScript engine, and that's V8, Chakra, or whatever you have out there, we find a lot of problems that we feed back to the standards makers. So the whole like, how many of these 50 features do you use or do you support is kind of pointless as well. It's just a very interesting little thing to do, and you can make infographics about it. Most speed increases are analyzing and fixing developer mistakes. And that's interesting. Like when we did the length iterator thing, for example, out of a sudden the JavaScript engine became 1.5 times faster than it was in IE 11. And we realized that these are mistakes that people make. Let's cater for these mistakes and make it faster for everybody. So the things that browsers fix under the hood for us is quite huge. And I'm pushing more and more of my colleagues to give talks about that, because that's exciting stuff, I think. One problem that ES6 doesn't have is that Safari iOS is actually on board, rather than other standards that we come up with, like web components or I don't know, service workers, like a lot of things that we get very excited about. iOS Safari is always the linchpin. And that's the browser that's used by the most spending people on the planet on the most exciting operating system for marketers and for people that actually say this is what the new standard of the web is. So the whole concept of Safari is the new IE has some merits, iOS Safari, but in ES6 it's not the issue, because ES6 is beneficial for iOS itself. So they have actually good support in that one in Safari 9. And I'm looking forward to that. So I need you to help me fix this issue. Let's make a baseline a reality. Let's not think about the future all the time, but move the web forward and use these features in some way or another to see, give us information, test it in your environments, and feedback to browsers how we can make it faster. You can help ES6 by looking at the unit tests. They're on GitHub, and these are the tests that every browser runs through to say if they're ES6 compliant or not. There's actually a gamification interface to it called es6katas.org, where every day you can look at one of the tests and play it and basically help out making the ES6 issue better. Check back periodically on support. The Kangas compatibility table with ES6 is updated all the time, and this is cool. Don't look at things once and say, broken, never going to come back again. The amount of people that really think I cannot use geolocation in a browser, although Firefox 3.5 supported it, is stunning. Because people see it once, or they hear it once on stage that something is broken and expect it to be broken till the end of life. No, we fix things. Please. Don't do any browser testing saying like, this is Firefox, it will not support this. Do this is Firefox 38 on a Mac, and then fix the things in there. Because if Firefox 39 on a Mac fixes that one, that code will not be executed any longer. So our patches should be patches that go away and not stay forever. ES6 performance is on this 6-beat on GitHub as well, which shows you all the things that are faster and slower than ES5. The ones that are faster than ES5 are the ones that are not supported by ES5, so that's quite interesting. But everything else is more or less slower. The great thing about JavaScript is that it's a super flexible language that you can use in any environment. Like we were able to script Illustrator in JavaScript years ago. Now we have it on the server, we have it on the client, we have it on watches, we have it on dogs, we have it on fridges, wherever. JavaScript is applicable everywhere, in different ways, in different environments, and in different structures and patterns, but it is available. So ES6 to me should not be a future promise by browser vendors, platform owners, or library creators. It's up to us to catch that carrot and eat it. And that's good, because it's good for your eyes, and carrots, orange things are quite nice anyways. Try to use as much ES6 as you can, even in the client. I know this sounds dangerous, but I think it's a very important step for the web. Feature test a few things that do make a lot of sense. Promises, for example. Every new library, every new API that comes up for the web is promise-based. So this is something that will come. So get your head around promises. You can polyfill them, probably shouldn't, but it makes sense to do test for a promise and then write some JavaScript that only executes in the browsers that support it. Get to play with template strings. I think they're really cool because they allow us for client-side templating, and inside a template element that becomes quite interesting as well, because now we have an HTML element that doesn't make any sense without JavaScript. We had Canvas before, but this is specifically made to do client-side scripting with it and client-side templating with it. So take a look at that. Run tests, feedback what works and what doesn't, and don't just complain that something is not supported. Give us a use case, why you want this, why it's a very important thing for your product. And this kind of research is never a waste because you learn by doing. You don't read a tutorial or see a talk about ES6, but you play with it and you find your own mistakes, you find your own happiness that way. In defined environments, go crazy, go nuts, use every single ES6 feature you can find. Try them out and play with them, and that's environments like node solutions, browser extensions, in-browser functionality. These are great opportunities to knock out kinks in the standard itself, to go crazy with the language because you control the environment. You're not at the back-end call of end users having a proper browser, but you control the environment, you know it's going to work, and you can upgrade to I/O or the newest version of Node or whatever packages you need to install to make that happen. Any issue found there can speed up the adoption of the client as well, because on the client we're going to be much, much slower than in these closed environments. So anything we can make work in packages and in modules and in ES6 in node solutions, we don't have to retest in the client any longer, and that is a good thing because it takes much, much more time to do that. And above all, I think it's time for all of us to have more love for innovation and not hope that the Microsofts, the Googles, the Apples, the Firefoxes out there are actually innovating for us. You are the creator of the next web. Every single one of you. Even the people who don't write JavaScript, even the people who want good UX in the browser. You are the people that bring the web forward. Because if we don't have solutions to fix as a developer, we come up with solutions to problems that we came up ourselves. We need real problems to solve. The web became the success it is because people like you cared for it. There was no one company that told us how to use it. No company said like, this is the web and it's open and it's free, oh look at that. You wanted it, you got it, and now we have to deal with it, with all its kinks and all its problems. It's important and should be cherished by all involved. My love to the web is so strong because I saw people grow, become something else. People who had children, lost their old job, and became a web developer, made a small company and made some money with the web and became a creator and became much more self-assured because of that as well, because they created something, not because they got paid to do something. Help it stay that way by supporting those pushing it forward and using what is on offer. So if Microsoft innovates, look at that. If Firefox innovates, look at that. If Chrome innovates, you look at that anyways. If Apple innovates, clap. Because anything that Apple does publicly right now, we need to support, because that's the last company that is basically very hard to know what's going on inside. And I wished we had more information about this. Features get prioritized when they are in use by developers. So see what you can do to give us back real data using new and innovative technology in real products. It's not about how much you shout out on Twitter, how much you scream around and how much you bang the drum on like browser should do this and that and that. We need you to use that stuff because then we have a real need for it to be fixed inside the browser. And that's all I got. So I thank you very much. I hope there's a great day for you ahead. Think about becoming the baseline of the web. All of us are here to drive the web forward, not to look up to somebody amazing that will drive the web forward for us. You have a voice, you have coding skills, you have development skills, you have a company that builds something. Make that thing you build something more beautiful and use new technology, then everybody else will get better new technology. I'll be available at this booth over there at Microsoft Edge all the time. There's colleagues of mine there as well that speak Portuguese, so you don't have to speak with me. And that's all I had, so rock on today and bring the baseline of the web. Thanks.